Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has rejected the Trump administration's Middle East peace plan. It's been 12 years since Israel and the Palestinians have engaged in direct talks. But yesterday at the UN, the two men who engaged in those talks announced that they're resuming negotiations. Abbas and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert held a press conference in New York. The last time direct talks broke down, Olmert faced corruption charges, which he later served jail time, and the war in Gaza began around the same time. Abbas and Olmert's new round of discussions are complicating White House efforts, led by senior advisor Jared Kushner. Abbas criticized the U.S. plan yesterday.
A few days ago, the so-called deal of the century was introduced, which was totally denying international legality and destroying the two-state solution. And it cannot be a basis for any future negotiations that would lead to our joint endeavor of achieving peace. This is why it was rejected, not only by us, but by the international community.
Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert joins me now. Thank you very much, Mr. Olmert, for joining us here. You know, 12 years ago when you sat down, you offered Abbas an incredibly generous, in fact, one of the most generous that any Israeli Prime Minister has offered. The most, period. Yeah. Land swaps, much of the West Bank. Why do you feel like you guys can reach an agreement 12 years later if he didn't agree to it then?
Reena, I'm not here to negotiate with Mahmoud Abbas. I'm not in a position to negotiate. I'm not in government now. I don't represent any political body. And this is not a purpose. I was invited here to speak in several places, including in the Council on Foreign Relations this morning. And since Abbas was here and he suggested that we'll get together, as we do every now and then over the years, I met with him and I took the opportunity that I was having a meeting with him to advise him not to reject so aggressively what appears to him to be a very unfair plan.
You were the mayor of Jerusalem.
I was.
You were the mayor of Jerusalem at one point. Why do you feel so strongly that Jerusalem should be a shared capital?
Because Jerusalem is a shared capital already. The fact is that all the villages which were annexed to Jerusalem in 1967 are not really part of the historic Jerusalem. They don't have any meaning for Jewish history, Jewish heritage, Jewish memories, Jewish prayers. And why not split that part which is inhabited only by Arabs, which is not any part of what Jerusalem means for us, the Jewish people, and thus, you know, advance the chances for having peace. By the way, President Trump, surprisingly, against all the observations that were made, it was somehow sidetracked. But the president talks about Jerusalem is Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state. So he talks about two fundamental things, which I thought, and that's what I say to President Abbas, can be a basis for further efforts to negotiate.
How did
one
you leave?
is, just one second,
Sure.
Reena. One thing is a two-state solution, which is fundamental for anything in the future, and the other thing is that East Jerusalem will be the capital of the Palestinian state. So these two things are positive. You know, there are many things which he entirely against Abbas.
Yeah.
But what I say to him basically is, hey, you have to look at the positive side where you can open up a process that can be fruitful also from the point of view which is important for you.
How did you leave it with Abbas yesterday? How are you going to move forward at this point?
I'm not negotiating with him. I don't know. It's up to him. I just gave him an advice, what I think is good for the process. Look, you know, you guys are divided in America and we are divided in Israel, and there are those who are absolutely against the president, those who are absolutely for the president. I'm not there. I'm not in American politics. It's none of my business. But I know one thing about President Trump. He's a very ambitious guy. And when he calls a deal, the deal of a century, he wants it to succeed. He definitely doesn't want it to fail. And he knows that this is going to be not a peace between Israel and America, that we have already. It has to be a deal between Israel and the Palestinians. So there must be a Palestinian partner. And what basically I wanted to impress with meeting with Abbas is that he is the only potential partner for negotiations between us and the Palestinians. I couldn't achieve the agreement that I was sponsoring 12 years ago, although I thought that this was a far-reaching proposal, and it was very, I think, very appropriate for him to accept it. But still, if there is a chance to build up on the principles that were laid down by President Trump, the effort must be made. And that's what I suggested.
I know you're going to great lengths not to criticize President Trump, but Jared Kushner called this pathetic. He said that you were jealous because you couldn't strike a deal. What do you say to Kushner?
Listen, he's a good man. He's a good man, and also he's a great supporter of the state of Israel. So do you want me to, I think this was a slip of the tongue.
You think this was an accident?
Someone told me Israeli politics is very emotional now. So all my political opponents in Israel, the Prime Minister and others, say that I came to America to fight against the president. And Jared Kushner was asked, what do you think about it? So what could he say? He has to defend his president. And he said, Olmert is pathetic. I don't take it seriously. I think, I don't know, I'm not in touch with him, but I feel that even he doesn't take it seriously. I think he knows better. Anyway, I'm not jealous. I'll be the most enthusiastic supporter of President Trump if he will succeed to make peace between Israel and the Palestinians. I hope he will, by the way, because I think he's very ambitious and he's very aggressive in pursuing his goals. And I hope that the Palestinians this time will prefer to say yes, but rather than no, which maybe, hopefully will happen.
I want to ask you, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this was a very low point in Israeli history, talking about your efforts. Your country is 20 days roughly away from the third election in a year. Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu will have enough seats to form a coalition and remain Prime Minister?
Number one, I say, Netanyahu is in his lowest point in life, not just in his career. He failed twice in the last less than a year in the last two election campaigns to form a government, and he will fail in the third time, and he will be out of politics into his own personal ordeal. So, I don't feel comfortable to sit here in New York and say about the Israeli Prime Minister what I may say and will say when I'm in Israel. I give him credit for the good things that he did, and he did a couple of good things for the state of Israel, and I forgive him at this low point in his life for all the other things that he does and says, which are totally unacceptable and will not be acceptable by the Israeli public.
Since you are sitting here in New York, I want to ask you, is there a Democratic candidate that you believe could take on President Trump?
Oh, Reena, you have a very interesting curiosity. But
I know you follow elections here very closely. I know this from my time covering you as Prime Minister. I know you follow it very closely. I follow the elections, and I'm very, I must say, I'm very enthused by the dynamics and the surprises of these elections. Every candidate that will be elected by the Democrats will be a friend of Israel. Trump is a great friend of Israel. So I don't think that we have a problem, and we certainly will not, I don't think that I have to intervene in the political process in America. I wish the very best for the president and the very best for the Democratic candidate that will be elected at the time that he will be elected. And I wish the very best for America, because America is a great friend of Israel. We've only got a few seconds left, Mr. Prime Minister, but before you go, I want to ask you, President Obama's Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, do you believe that was a good deal?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yes, absolutely. I think that a lot of injustice was done to President Obama in Israel. I admired him, I respected him. He was a great friend of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. And all I can say is that I always regretted the unfairness with which he was treated by some Israelis. He's a great American, a great leader, and a great friend of our people.
Mr. Olmert, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on CBSN. Thank you very much.